He called her a nobody in front of everyone. He laughed as his mistress dripped champagne on her dress, telling her she didn't belong. He said he was divorcing her to marry someone with power. What he didn't know as he stood in that glittering ballroom was that his simple wife was the secret heir to a European throne. And the important investors he was trying to impress. They worked for her father. The doors were about to open and his entire world was about to end. The first lie was the apartment. It wasn't hers. Of course, Julian Thorne didn't know that. He just thought it was a charming, if tragically small, pre-war apartment on the Upper East Side. He thought the modest inheritance Sarah Jensen lived on was just that modest. Tonight, the apartment felt smaller than ever, suffocating under the weight of Julian's ambition. "Sarah, are you even listening?" Julian snapped, not looking up from his phone. He was already in his custom-tailored Brioni tuxedo, a stark, handsome shadow against the cream-colored walls. "I am." Serafina Nocera kept her voice soft the way he preferred. She was fastening the clasp of a simple pearl necklace. "You said the Metropolis Heritage Ball is critical for the new fund." "Critical? It's everything." He finally looked at her and his lip curled just slightly. She saw it. He thought he was being subtle. "Is that what you're wearing?" She looked down at her dress. It was a deep emerald green, vintage, elegant and deliberately understated. "It's a classic." I thought, "It's fine, Sarah, just fine." He sighed, running a hand through his perfect hair. "It's just, tonight I'm closing the biggest deal of my life. I'm securing final stage funding for Thorne Global Capital. I need to look like I have a lioness, not a, well, just try to stand near the back, all right? And please don't talk to Mr. Duvall. I'll handle him." The barb hit its mark, as it was intended to. For 5 years, Serafina of Valoria had lived as Sarah Jensen. She had left the cold marble halls of her father's palace in Valoria, a tiny, fiercely wealthy principality nestled between France and Switzerland. She had left her title, her security, and her name, all for one naive dream to find someone who would love her, not the crown. She had met Julian at a Sotheby's auction where she was working as a junior curator for the Sullivan Gallery. He was magnetic, ambitious, and seemingly enchanted by her knowledge of art and her grounded nature. They married within a year, and for the last 6 months he had been a different person. He was cold, dismissive, and constantly on his phone smiling at texts from V. "I know I'm not what you're used to, Julian," she said, testing the water. "These society women. But I love you." "I love you too, Sarah," he said, the words as empty as the champagne flute he'd left on her antique dresser. "Now let's go. Victoria Vance is hosting the pre-gala reception and I can't be late." He didn't offer her his arm. He just walked out the door expecting her to follow. She took a deep breath, looking at the small frame photo on her nightstand. It was of her and her father, King Alistair II, dressed in hiking gear on a mountain in Valoria long before she'd begun this experiment. "Just one more night, Papa," she whispered. "One more night." The Grand Astoria Hotel was a riot of flashing bulbs and shouted names. Julian naturally was in his element. He strode onto the red carpet, flashing a $1 million smile, his hand possessively on Sarah's lower back. It wasn't affection. It was a prop. He needed the image of a happy marriage even as he was dismantling it in private. "Julian Thorne over here," a reporter from Tatler called out. "Julian, darling, you made it!" A voice like shattered glass cut through the noise. "Victoria Vance." She was poured into a dress that was more diamonds than fabric, her arm linked with a minor scandal-plagued British aristocrat. But her eyes were only on Julian. She glided over, completely ignoring Sarah, and placed a kiss directly on Julian's mouth. It was brief, but it was not friendly. It was a brand. "Victoria," Julian said, his voice a low purr. He didn't pull away. He didn't introduce his wife. "Isn't this just magical?" Victoria beamed, her eyes finally landing on Sarah. Her gaze raked over the vintage dress with blatant disdain. "Oh, hello, Sarah. What a quaint dress." Did you borrow it from your grandmother's closet?" Before Sarah could respond, Julian laughed. He laughed. "Victoria, you're wicked," he said, squeezing her hand. "Come, I need to talk to you about the after-party." He walked away. He left his wife standing alone on the red carpet as the cameras flashed, capturing her humiliation. She stood there for a full 10 seconds, the world a blur of white light and popping sounds. He laughed. That was the moment the glass in her heart didn't just crack. It pulverized. She composed her features, gave a polite icy nod to the bewildered reporters, and walked inside. The ballroom was magnificent, a sea of gilded architecture and crystal chandeliers. But Sarah saw none of it. She saw Julian and Victoria in a corner, huddled together, his hand on her waist. They were laughing. Sarah got a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and moved to the edge of the room. She would endure. She would get through the night, go home, and then she would have to decide. Well, if it isn't little Mrs. Thorne all alone. Victoria was back this time without Julian. "What do you want, Victoria?" Sarah asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Oh, just to offer my condolences. It must be so hard trying to keep up." Victoria swirled her champagne. "You see a man like Julian? He's a predator. He needs a partner who can hunt with him. You, my dear, are prey. You're domesticated. And you're not." "Darling, I'm the lioness," Victoria purred. "He just told me. As soon as his deal with the Europeans closes tonight, he's dropping you. He's upgrading." Sarah's blood ran cold. He said that word for word." Victoria smiled, a cruel, triumphant slash of red lipstick. "And he sealed the deal." She held up her hand where a new, blindingly large diamond sat on her right ring finger. "A welcome gift. He's just so generous." Sarah didn't say anything. She just turned and walked away, heading for the ornate marble terrace. She needed air. She was suffocating. She stepped out into the cool November night, the sounds of the city far below. Her hands were shaking, not from sadness, not anymore, from rage. She pulled her own phone from her simple clutch. It was an old, nondescript model she used for one purpose. She speed-dialed a single number. It was answered on the first ring. "Gideon?" Her voice was no longer the soft, breathy tone of Sarah. It was crisp, cold, and full of authority. "Your Highness?" The voice on the other end was deep calm. "Are you compromised?" "I am disappointed." She said the code word for a situation that had become intolerable. "My Odysseus protocol is broken. The experiment is over." There was a pause. "Understood. Shall I retrieve you?" She looked back through the glass doors. She could see Julian now standing with a group of men, including the one he'd pointed out as Mr. Duval. He was holding court, the king of his own tiny, fraudulent world. "No," Serafina said, a new hard resolve in her voice. "I am not retreating. I am advancing. Gideon, execute protocol Nemesis." A beat of stunned silence. "Your Highness, that protocol requires—" "I am aware of what it requires. I am aware of the consequences. Do it. And Gideon, Majesty, bring the car, the official one. And I think it's time you made the other call. Yes, to my father." When she walked back into the ballroom, the change was so subtle that no one, least of all Julian, would have noticed. But it was there. Her back was straighter. Her chin was higher. The Sarah Jensen, who had been trying to blend in, was gone. The woman who re-entered the room was a princess of Valoria, and she was done playing. She moved through the crowd, a ghost in an emerald dress. People parted, sensing a shift in the atmosphere around her. She didn't stop until she was standing directly in front of Julian and his circle of potential investors. And so, with this final infusion from Mr. Duval's group, Julian was saying, his voice booming with false confidence, "Thorne Global Capital is poised to dominate the European tech market." Julian. Her voice cut through his speech like a diamond on glass. He turned, his smile freezing. "Sarah, I told you to wait. Mr. Duval, gentlemen, my apologies. Your wife is here to ask you a question, Julian. Her voice was not loud, but it was so clear and cold that the entire group fell silent. The music seemed to dip. What are you doing? He hissed, grabbing her arm. She pulled her arm away smoothly. I was admiring Victoria's new ring. She looked directly at Mr. Duval, a distinguished man in his late 50s. She told me Julian gave it to her. As an upgrade. Julian's face went white, then blotchy with red. Sarah, you're making a scene. Am I? Serafina asked, her voice laced with ice. You were the one who told me that diamond necklace you bought last week was an investment. I just didn't realize the investment was her. She pointed. Across the room, Victoria was preening, showing off a spectacular diamond necklace to a group of socialites. The same necklace Julian had sworn was for a client. The investors, including Mr. Duval, were now watching intently. This was no longer a party, it was a spectacle. Julian, cornered and panicking, did what all cowards do. He attacked. A scene! He roared, his voice suddenly loud and cruel. You want a scene? Fine. You're right, I'm done. I'm done with you. He jabbed a finger at her. Look at you. You're nothing. You're a leech. You're a small, simple-minded girl from a no-name family who got lucky. You're a dead weight, Sarah. A collective gasp went through the onlookers. I am destined for more, he shouted, his eyes wild. I am building an empire. I need a partner, not a parakeet, Victoria, he jest. She's a lioness. She understands power. You just understand how to spend my money on ugly old dresses. Serafina didn't flinch. She just stood there, letting him empty his arsenal. So yes, he spat, moving in close, his voice a venomous whisper. It's over. As soon as my deal is signed, I'm filing for divorce. I'm upgrading, and there is not a single thing you can do about it. He smiled a terrible, triumphant grin, believing he had won. He turned back to the investors. Gentlemen, my apologies for that domestic interruption. Now, Mr. Duval, about the term sheet. Mr. Duval did not look at Julian. His gaze was fixed over Julian's shoulder at the main ballroom doors. His expression was not one of disgust or even interest. It was fear. Mr. Thorne, Duval said, his voice a dry rasp. I don't think I am the man you should be speaking to. Julian frowned. What are you talking about? I mean, a new voice said, that you should probably be talking to me. Julian turned. Sarah did not. She just smiled. Gideon was standing there. He was no longer in the simple black suit of a driver. He was in the formal dark blue uniform of the Valorian Royal Guard, his chest adorned with a single silver medal. He was flanked by two other men built like mountains with earpieces and impassive faces. They were not hotel security. They were military. Gideon, Sarah said, her voice warm for the first time all night. You're late. My apologies, Your Highness, Gideon said, bowing his head deeply. The traffic was uncooperative. Julian's mouth opened and closed. Your Highness Sarah, what is this? Did you hire actors? This is insane. Gideon ignored him, stepping aside to reveal the now open ballroom doors. Mr. Thorne, Gideon said, his voice booming with baritone authority. May I present His Majesty King Alistair II of the Royal House of Valoria. The entire ballroom went silent. The music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, it all died, sucked into a vacuum of pure, unadulterated shock. Through the doors walked a man who did not just command a room. He owned the very air within it. King Alistair II was tall, with a mane of distinguished silver hair and a bearing that spoke of centuries of command. He was not in a tuxedo. He was in a bespoke suit of such dark, expensive material that it seemed to drink the light, his lapel adorned with the unmistakable jeweled insignia of the Order of the Valorian Griffin. He was flanked by 4 more guards, their suits bulging with equipment, their eyes scanning the room with terrifying efficiency. Behind him was a small entourage of men and women in severe business attire who fanned out and immediately began speaking quietly to the hotel's general manager and the head of security. The ambassador from France, who had been laughing by the bar, choked on his champagne and performed a half bow. A British duchess, known for her snobbery, actually curtsied. This was not business royalty. This was actual royalty. King Alistair's eyes scanned the room, bypassing the fawning socialites and stunned billionaires until they found his daughter. He walked forward. The sound of his leather-soled shoes on the marble floor was the only sound in the 5,000-square-foot ballroom. He walked past the horrified Victoria Vance. He walked past the frozen, gaping Julian Thorne. He stopped directly in front of Serafina. A flicker of warmth entered his stern blue eyes. He took her hand, the one that wasn't wearing Julian's ring, and brought it to his lips, bowing his head. "Serafina," he said, his voice a quiet rumble that nonetheless carried to every corner of the hall. "Are you all right, Moje Serche?" "My heart." Serafina curtsied. Not the bobbing dip of a socialite, but the deep, graceful, and practiced reverence of a princess. "I am now Papa," she said. The blood drained from Julian's face. He looked at Sarah. He looked at the king. He looked at Serafina. And he looked at Mr. Duval, the man he'd been begging for money. Mr. Duval, the stern investor, had moved to the king's side and was now bowing. "Your Majesty," Duval said, "a pleasure as always." "Mr. Duval," the king said, his voice now flat and cold as a glacier. "My head of North American operations for Valorian Holdings. I trust the trip from our Zurich headquarters was pleasant." "It was Your Majesty," Duval said. Julian made a small choking sound. Valorian Holdings, the mysterious European conglomerate he had been chasing for a year, the whale that was going to make his company. He looked at Serafina, his simple wife, the wife who worked in an art gallery, the wife who spoke 5 languages, the wife who had a knack for finance he had always dismissed as cute. "You," he whispered, pointing a shaking finger at her. You were Valorian Holdings." Serafina finally turned to look at him, and it was the look of a queen staring at an insect. "No, Julian," she said, her voice clear and caring. "I am not Valorian Holdings. Valorian Holdings is the private equity firm that manages my family's money. The money you have been desperately trying to get your hands on. The investors you've been lying to, they are my father's employees." The king stepped forward a single menacing step. He was a foot taller than Julian and radiated an aura of absolute power. "Mr. Thorne," King Alistair said, his voice dangerously level, "you were seeking a capital infusion. You were wooing my chief financial officer," he gestured to Duval, "and you were divorcing my daughter in public." The revelation hit Julian not like a wave, but like a physical blow from a cannon. The woman he had, the power he wanted, the money he needed. It was all her. It was always her. The woman he had just publicly, cruelly, and irrevocably discarded. Her royal father entered the ballroom, and the cheating husband fell to his knees. It wasn't a metaphor. His legs, which had been shaking, gave out completely. He stumbled, catching himself on a chair before sliding to the marble floor, his $5,000 tuxedo pooling around him. Your Majesty," he babbled, his hands outstretched. "Princess Serafina, I didn't know. It was a mistake, a joke. It was a joke. A joke." Serafina repeated the words, tasting like ash. "You called me a dead weight. You called me nothing." "No. I love you," he cried, crawling on the floor. "I've always loved you. Please, Serafina, tell them. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding." Serafina looked down at the pathetic, broken man groveling at her feet. The man she had loved. The man who had been her husband. "Gideon," she said, her voice sharp. "Your Highness." "Victoria Vance." Serafina pointed to the socialite who was trying to melt into the wall. "She's wearing a new ring and a necklace. The necklace in particular." Gideon's eyes narrowed. He recognized it. "I believe," Serafina continued, her voice projecting for the entire room, "that you will find the necklace is a custom piece from the Maison de Valoria Royal Jewelers. Specifically the Star of Eldoria set." She looked at Victoria, who had turned a shade of white that matched the tablecloths. "Its serial number is V1138, and it was reported stolen from our family vault in Zurich last week." Victoria let out a small shriek. He gave it to me, I didn't know. He said it was a gift." "Oh, I'm sure he did," Serafina said. "Julian has a habit of giving away things that don't belong to him." She turned her gaze back to her husband. "Didn't you, Julian?" Julian was now hyperventilating. "Stolen. No, I bought it from a private dealer, a very reputable dealer." "A dealer?" The king interjected, his voice booming with wrath. "Who has been under surveillance by Interpol for trafficking in stolen artifacts. My artifacts." "You thief!" "Gideon," Serafina said, "please inform the NYPD, who I believe are waiting downstairs, and our friends at Interpol. We have found their thief and his accomplice." "Accomplice!" Victoria screamed as two of the Valorian guards moved to block her exit. "He told me he loved me. He told me he was leaving her for me." "And what a prize you've won," Serafina said dryly. Julian scrambled to his feet, his eyes wild with terror. "You can't do this. I have a company, I have assets. I'll sue." This time Mr. Duval laughed. It was a short, sharp, brutal sound. "Sue Mr. Thorne. With what?" Duval stepped forward, pulling a tablet from his briefcase. "Thorne Global Capital. An impressive name for a company that is in essence a house of cards." He tapped the screen. "You've been over-leveraged for 18 months, Mr. Thorne. You've been funding your lavish lifestyle, the cars, the watches, the gifts for your mistress by taking on more and more debt." I have investors," Julian stammered. "No, you don't," Duval said. "You have one investor, one sole debt holder who has been quietly buying up all your debt, propping you up, waiting for this very moment." Julian's eyes widened in dawning horror. "Who?" Duval smiled. "A small anonymous holding company registered in the Caymans, which is in turn a wholly owned subsidiary of Valorian Holdings S.A. He turned the tablet to face Julian. "We own you, Mr. Thorne. We have been the only thing keeping you from bankruptcy for a year. We were waiting for a signal from Her Highness." Serafina gave a small, cold nod. "And," Mr. Duval said with immense satisfaction, "we just received it, as of 9:14 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All your credit lines are frozen, all your assets are seized, and we are calling the note in its entirety, effective immediately." He tapped the screen one last time. "You are not just a social pariah, Mr. Thorne. You are bankrupt. You nothing." Julian looked at the tablet. He looked at the king. He looked at Serafina. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His entire life, his company, his reputation, his future had been erased with a single tap on a screen. He fell back to his knees, a hollow, broken shell of a man. The ballroom, which had been a cathedral of silence, erupted into a frantic buzz of whispers. Victoria Vance was being spoken to by two uniformed NYPD officers who had been discreetly let in. Julian Thorne was just kneeling. His head hung in abject defeat. King Alistair put a protective arm around his daughter's shoulder. "Gideon, bring my daughter her coat." "Yes, Your Majesty." Gideon returned not with the simple cloth coat Sarah had arrived in, but with a magnificent full-length cape of dark Valorian velvet embroidered with the royal crest. He draped it over her shoulders. The transformation was complete. The emerald green dress, once so quaint, now looked like the attire of a wood nymph who had been hiding a dragon's power. "Come, Seraphina," her father said gently. "You have been Sarah long enough. It is time to come home." She nodded, taking his offered arm. They began the long walk to the doors, a king and his heir, the crowd parting before them like the sea. But as she reached the door, Seraphina stopped. She turned back. The entire room, full of the most powerful people in New York, held its breath. She looked at the stunned faces, the reporters scrambling for their phones, the socialites who had whispered about her. "For 5 years," she said, her voice clear and strong, no microphone needed, "I lived among you as Sarah Jensen. It was an experiment. I wanted to see if I could build a life, a real life, and find someone who would love me for me. Not for a title, not for a vault in Zurich." She looked directly at the broken man on the floor. "I failed, but I learned." A new strength filled her. "I learned that a title does not give you power, it gives you responsibility. And I learned that the name I tried to hide, the name Sarah Jensen, is not a name of shame. It is the name of a woman who learned to survive." She turned to her father. "Papa, the Alistair Foundation was this evening's primary sponsor, was it not?" The king nodded. "It was. Our donation," she announced to the room, "will be doubled." A stunned, then enthusiastic round of applause started. However, she held up a hand, silencing the room once more. "It will be administered through a new special fund which I will personally oversee." She smiled a true bright smile. "We will call it the Sarah Jensen Fund, and it will be dedicated to providing legal and financial support for women who are trying to rebuild their lives after being deceived by men of unscrupulous character." It was a final, perfect, devastating blow. She had not only destroyed her enemy, she had built her legacy on his ashes. Without another word, Princess Seraphina of Valoria, flanked by her father, the king, swept out of the ballroom, leaving chaos and a beautiful, hard-earned lesson in karma in her wake. The double doors of the Grand Astoria ballroom hissed shut behind them, cutting off the explosion of noise as if a vacuum seal had been engaged. The pandemonium, the shouts of "Your Majesty," the frantic clicking of 100 phone cameras, the first wail of Victoria Vance as an NYPD officer touched her elbow was instantly muffled, replaced by the hushed, sterile quiet of the marble corridor. Seraphina felt like she was floating. Her hand was steady on her father's arm, but her legs felt distant, as if they were moving on memory alone. She had been Sarah Jensen for 2053 days. In the last 10 minutes, that woman had been field stripped, dissected, and immolated on a pyre of public humiliation and royal revelation. Gideon, his face an impassive granite mask, walked 2 paces ahead. 4 other Valorian guardsmen Seraphina had known her entire life formed a perfect silent diamond formation around her and the king. They moved with an oiled, terrifying efficiency, parting the stunned hotel staff who had flattened themselves against the wallpaper. "The car is prepared, Your Majesty," Gideon said, his voice a low rumble. They swept through the private lobby past a secondary security team that was holding back a new frantic wave of paparazzi who had somehow gotten the tip. The flashes were blinding, a strobing epileptic assault, but Seraphina kept her chin high. She saw his face in one of the flashes, Julian's, a mask of abject pleading terror. Then the doors of the limousine, a custom-armored Mercedes Maybach, shut with the heavy, definitive thud of a bank vault. Silence. The car did not move. It sat in the concrete bay, a black, bulletproof bubble of calm amidst the storm. Seraphina stared at her hands, which were folded in her lap on the velvet cape. "Seraphina." Her father's voice was uncharacteristically gentle. The king was gone. Papa was back. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice thick with a rage he was only just containing. She thought about the question. Hurt. The last 6 months. The lies. The laughter. The coldness. The casual cruelty of his words, a dead weight, a nobody. Yes, that had hurt. But the woman it had hurt was gone, burned away in the ballroom's bright lights. "I am awake," she said finally, her voice raspy. She turned to look at him, and for the first time he saw not his daughter, but his heir. "I am so incredibly awake." A single hot tear traced a path down her cheek, not of sadness, but of sheer unadulterated relief. She wiped it away with the back of her hand, and her fingers brushed against the simple 2-carat diamond ring Julian had given her. The one he had called tasteful and appropriate for her. She looked at it, this symbol of her failed experiment, this monument to her own naivete. With a cold, deliberate motion, she pulled it off her finger. It left a pale, indented mark on her skin. She didn't look at it for more than a second. "Gideon," she said, her voice clear. The partition separating them from the driver's seat slid down. Gideon, who was in the passenger seat, turned. Serafina held the ring out between 2 fingers. "Please have this analyzed. I want to know if the diamond is as fake as he was. And then—" She paused. "Have it melted down. The gold can be donated." Gideon took the ring without a word. "As you wish, Your Highness." He slid the partition closed. King Alistair watched the exchange. A slow, proud smile touched his lips. "So," he said, "it is over. We go home. The jet is waiting at Teterboro." The limousine finally pulled out, gliding into the New York traffic with the silent, menacing grace of a shark. Serafina watched the city lights blur past the tinted glass. Home. The palace. The cold marble halls, the polite bows, the suffocating safety. "The experiment is over, Papa," she agreed, her voice hardening. "But I am not going home." He frowned. "Serafina, I don't understand. You are safe now. This nightmare is finished. Julian Thorne will be a stain in the history books, nothing more. My lawyers will—" "Your lawyers?" she interrupted, turning to face him, the full force of her presence filling the small space. "Your lawyers will do nothing. My lawyers will." Alistair sat back, stunned into silence. "You sent me here for one reason, did you not?" She continued, the words coming fast, sharp, and precise. "You told me, to rule you must first learn to serve. To lead you must first learn to be invisible. I was to be Sarah Jensen Jr. curator for 1 year, to understand the common person, to learn the value of work. I stayed for 5. Do you know why? You fell in love," he said, his tone softening. "No," she said, her voice like ice. "I fell for a projection. What I actually fell in love with was work. I loved having a purpose that I built myself. I loved being judged on my merits, not my name. And I'm good at it, Papa. I am very good at it." The car was speeding down the FDR drive, now its escort vehicles forming an impenetrable wall. Julian's public humiliation. That was just the appetizer. The man is not just a cheater, Papa. He's a fraud. And he's a sloppy one. Mr. Duval," she said, her eyes flashing, "is a steward. He's a brilliant accountant. He protects the family's assets. But he is not creative. He is not a killer. He has been managing this situation. I'm going to end it." The king was speechless, a rare and beautiful state. "You put Mr. Duval in charge of Valorian Holdings' North American operations. As of tonight, as of right now, I am taking his job." The car pulled to a stop on a private Teterboro tarmac, its nose pointed at the sleek white silhouette of the Royal Valorian, Griffin 1. "Serafina," her father said, his voice now one of command. "That is a $50 billion portfolio. It is not a toy for you to use for revenge." She did not flinch. "He called me a dead weight. He called me a parakeet. He said I was nothing. He built his entire company, Thorne Global Capital, on the lie that he could secure funding from us. He used me, his simple wife, to try and get proximity to Duval. He used my name, my trust, and my love to build a house of cards. Revenge. This isn't revenge, Papa. This is a hostile takeover. It's business. Gideon opened the door. The cold night air hit her. She stood on the tarmac, the wind whipping her velvet cape. She looked at her father, who had followed her out. "I am not getting on that plane to go home," she said. "I am getting on that plane to use it as my new office. We are not flying to Valoria. We are flying to a secure holding pattern over the Atlantic while my new team assembles." Gideon. "Your Highness." "Secure the Valorian Royal Suite at the St. Regis. I want Mr. Duval, the entire legal team from Cravath, Swain, and Moore, and a full forensic accounting squad from Deloitte. I want them there in 3 hours. We will land at dawn." Her father stared at her, the wind ruffling his silver hair. He saw no fear in her eyes, no sadness, only a terrifying, focused, and righteous blaze. He had sent his daughter to learn to be a commoner. She had returned a queen. He nodded a single sharp motion. "Gideon, you heard the princess. Make it happen." He turned back to Serafina. "But I am staying with you, as an observer." "Of course, Papa," she said, a small dangerous smile on her lips as she ascended the stairs to the jet. "I'll need someone to fetch the coffee." The first shell hit at 500 a.m. just as the sun was painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gray. It was not a legal filing. It was not a phone call. It was page 6. Ballroom blood knee. King's crasher. Simple wife is secret princess. In a scene that insiders are calling the most dramatic public takedown in New York society history, tech bro Julian Thorne, founder of the embattled Thorne Global Capital, was royally, and we mean royally, dethroned. At the Metropolis Heritage Ball, Thorne was overheard viciously dumping his quaint wife Sarah in favor of socialite/vulture Victoria Vance. One problem, simple Sarah, is actually Her Royal Highness Princess Serafina of Valoria, heir to the throne, and more importantly to the multi-billion-dollar Valorian holdings. Thorne's entire company has been desperately seeking an investment from, you guessed it, Valorian. Eyewitnesses report that just as Thorne called his wife a dead weight, the ballroom doors opened and in walked His Majesty King Alistair II himself, flanked by guards. The man didn't just kneel, one duchess told page 6. He melted. It was delicious. He literally crawled. The night ended with Thorne in a puddle and Vance in handcuffs, arrested in connection with the theft of the priceless Star of Eldoria necklace. A palace source confirms the upgrade was in fact stolen property. Ouch. By 7:00 a.m., Forbes had dropped the financial hydrogen bomb. Thorne Global implosion, Valorian Holdings calls 1.2B. Debt note. Stock to zero. Following the shocking social circuit implosion of its founder Julian Thorne, Global Capital ceased to exist this morning. Valorian Holdings SA, which had been quietly buying up Thorne's substantial debt for the past 18 months, confirmed it has called the entire note effective immediately. A spokesperson for Valorian, which manages the private wealth of the Valorian royal family, stated, "Due to a catastrophic failure of leadership and credible allegations of criminal fraud, we have moved to protect our interests. All assets of Thorne Global Capital and Mr. Thorne personally have been frozen or seized." The market, which already had doubts, reacted instantly. The stock is worthless. Julian Thorne, who was worth an estimated $800 on paper last night, is as of 7:00 a.m. in debt. By 9:00 a.m., the royal suite at the St. Regis was a war room. The opulent Louis XVI-style furniture had been pushed to the walls. In its place were trestle tables, laptops, and massive wall-mounted screens displaying spreadsheets, market data, and legal documents. Serafina stood at the head of the table. She was not in a ball gown. She wore a severe black custom-tailored suit, her hair pulled back into a tight, unforgiving knot. The only jewelry she wore was a simple Valorian signet ring. Mr. Duval, looking like he hadn't slept in a year, was pointing a laser at a screen. "And it's worse than we thought, Your Highness. He wasn't just over-leveraged. He was running a full-blown Ponzi scheme. He was using projected revenue from our potential investment, the one he never had to secure other loans, which he then used to pay off other investors. And as we can see, fund his extracurriculars." A screen flashed showing receipts. $250,000 for Victoria Vance's rent. $1.2 million for a Patek Philippe watch. $80,000 at Le Bernardin in 3 months. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul and using the money to buy Paul a new Ferrari. Serafina said, her voice flat. "Exactly, Your Highness," Duval said, wiping his brow. "We've frozen everything. The bank accounts, the trading accounts, the penthouse, the jet, the cars. We have it all." "Not everything," Serafina said. The room went quiet. She walked to a separate screen, one she had been curating herself. "He had an art collection," she said. "One he was very proud of. He loved to tell me how uneducated my taste was. He loved to teach me." On the screen, a list of artworks appeared. A small bronze, a mid-century abstract, a series of classical sketches. "His taste," Serafina said, "was as fraudulent as his balance sheet, but it's valuable. We liquidate it, all of it." "Your Highness," a lawyer from Cravath spoke up, "that is his personal property. Seizing it to cover the corporate debt will be complex. He can fight it in court." "He can't," Serafina said, "if he doesn't technically own it." She tapped a file. A new name appeared. "Mr. Eris, the Sullivan Gallery." Duval looked confused. The gallery where you worked, Your Highness. The one on 57th Street." "The very one," Serafina said, her eyes turning to chips of ice. "The one place that was mine. The one part of my Sarah life that I thought was real." She turned to the room. "Julian didn't just betray me in our home. He betrayed me at my work. Mr. Duval, why can't we find the source of funding for his art purchases?" It's a shell, Your Highness," Duval stammered. "A blind trust in the Caymans. We can't pierce it without—" "You don't need to," Serafina said. "I know the account. It's ASG Holdings, Eris Sullivan Gallery. Julian wasn't just buying art from the gallery. He was buying art through the gallery. He was funneling money from Thorn Global into the gallery's holding company, which then sold him art, often fakes, or pieces at a 5,000% markup to clean the money. He made my boss, Mr. Eris, his personal launderer." King Alistair, who had been silent in the corner, let out a low, dangerous growl. "Your Highness," the lawyer said, his eyes wide. That is a massive criminal allegation. That's RICO. That's wire fraud. That's everything." "It's leverage," Serafina corrected him. "And I'm going to use it. Get a team ready. We're going to pay a visit to my old boss." The Sullivan Gallery was exactly as she'd left it, quiet, sterile, and smelling faintly of lemon oil and old money. Mr. Eris, a small bird-like man in a bow tie, was fluttering anxiously by his desk. When Serafina walked in, flanked not by royal guards, but by 2 terrifyingly expensive lawyers from Cravath, he nearly fainted. "Sarah," he chirped before his brain caught up. I mean, Your Highness, goodness. The news, I am simply, a princess. Here, all this time." "Cut the act, Eris," Serafina said, her voice echoing in the small, silent space. She walked past him, her heels clicking on the polished hardwood, and stopped in front of a small bronze sculpture of a dancer. "The Koutalides bronze," she said. A rather good fake, isn't it? Eris's blood ran out of his face. I don't know what you mean. It's been authenticated. It's a replica of the piece in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, Serafina said, not even looking at him. A lost original you claimed. You sold it to Julian Thorne 3 months ago for $2.5 million. It was a private sale completely above board, Eris squeaked. Was it? Serafina turned. And the $2.5 million, did it come from Julian's account? Or did it perhaps come from Thorne Global get funneled into the ASG Holdings account you use for acquisitions, and then you sold him the statue keeping 20% for your troubles? Eris opened his mouth, but no sound came out. I told you it was a fake, Eris, Serafina said, her voice dropping to a whisper. The day it arrived. I told you the patina was wrong and the casting marks were consistent with a 20th century mold. I told you. And you told me I was a diligent assistant and to log it anyway. He made me. Eris finally burst, tears welling. He knew about my debts, my gambling. He said he would ruin me. He said this was just creative financing, a tax write-off. He made you a money launderer, Eris, the lawyer said, stepping forward. And by extension, you helped him defraud investors, the SEC and the IRS. Eris sank into his chair, a broken man. What do you want? Serafina looked at the man who had been her boss, her friend, the man whose betrayal cut almost as deep as Julian's. You're going to do 2 things, she said. First, you will provide full written testimony of every single transaction Julian Thorne ran through this gallery. You will give my lawyers the account numbers, the dates, and the emails. You will, in effect, be the chief witness for the prosecution in the U.S. Attorney's case against him. And second, Eris whispered, terrified. Second, Serafina said, you will resign, effective immediately. You will sell this gallery. You will give my lawyers the list of every client you have ever defrauded with a fake, and you will use the proceeds of the sale to make them whole. Whatever is left, I don't care. Go and be a greeter at a casino. You will never work in the art world again. It was a fate worse than prison for a man like Eris. It was a reputational execution. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. Good, Serafina said. She walked to the door, then paused. And Eris, you will hand over the Koutalidis bronze and the rest of Mr. Thorne's collection. It's all evidence now. 1 month later, Serafina stood in a private skybox at Sotheby's. She was on the phone with Mr. Duval. Yes, the Q4 projections for the Zurich office look soft, but... No, I am not coming home. I will handle it from New York. Yes, I am aware. Thank you, Mr. Duval. She hung up, exasperated, just as her father entered the box with 2 glasses of champagne. You are terrorizing him, you know, Alistair said, handing her a glass. I am motivating him, she said, taking a sip. There's a difference. Below them, the auction floor was electric. It wasn't just an estate sale. It was the social event of the season. The press was packed in the back. Every socialite, collector, and ghoul in New York was present. The event, the Thorne Collection, sold by order of Valorian Holdings and the U.S. Marshals Service. And now Lot 45, the auctioneer announced, a collection of 12 bespoke Brioni suits. Who will open the bidding for me at $1,000? They are liquidating his life, Alistair mused. They are repaying his victims, Serafina corrected. Every penny from this auction goes to the employee pension fund and the smaller investors he defrauded. The Sarah Jensen Fund is matching the first $1 million. They watched as his Patek Philippe, the one from the Le Bernardin receipt, sold for half what he paid. His cars, his watches. Piece by piece, his entire identity was being dismantled and sold for parts. Then the climax of the evening. And now, Lot 112, the Star of Eldoria necklace. A gasp went through the room. The piece was brought out on a black velvet cushion. It was magnificent. "This exquisite replica," the auctioneer said, causing a confused murmur, "was commissioned by a Mr. Julian Thorne, who was then arrested for attempting to traffic what he believed to be the real artifact. It is nonetheless a stunning piece of jewelry. We will open the bidding at $5. In the skybox, Alistair turned to his daughter, his eyebrows raised. Serafina smiled. Julian was so arrogant he thought he'd stolen the real one from our vault. He was conned by the same dealer who was trying to sell it to him. The dealer sold him the high-grade replica Interpol has been tracking for years. The real one, she touched her throat, never left Zurich. He was arrested for trafficking a fake, which it turns out is just as illegal. Her father chuckled a deep rumbling sound. He wasn't just a monster, he was an idiot. A fool in every sense, Serafina agreed. And finally, the auctioneer said, his voice softening, "We have a very special final lot, Lot 113. A single mannequin was wheeled to the center of the stage. On it was a simple, elegant emerald green vintage dress. The dress of a princess, the auctioneer said, his voice full of reverence. Worn by Her Royal Highness Princess Serafina on the night she reclaimed her name. All proceeds from this lot will go directly to the Sarah Jensen Fund supporting victims of financial and domestic fraud." Serafina's breath caught. She had donated it, but she hadn't expected this. "We will open the bidding at $10,000. $50,000, a voice called. $100,000. $250,000. Serafina watched her hand over her mouth as the dress, her simple, quaint dress, was bid up higher and higher, a symbol not of her humiliation but of her triumph. "Sold!" the auctioneer cried, banging his gavel. $1.5 million, to the gentleman in the back. A round of thunderous applause filled the room. Serafina looked down at the floor, and for the first time she saw not a pit of vipers, but a city full of possibility. Her father raised his glass to her. "So, Your Highness, what's next?" Serafina turned from the window, leaving the ruins of Julian Thorne's life behind. She picked up her tablet, which was already flashing with new emails from the Zurich office. "What's next, Papa?" she said, a true bright smile playing on her lips. "Now, we work." What did you think of Serafina's incredible transformation? That moment when the king walked in? I just got chills. It just proves that you should never, ever underestimate the quiet person in the room. They might just be royalty in disguise waiting for their moment. And Julian. He learned the hard way that karma always cashes the check. If you love this story of hard karma and secret identity, you are going to love what I have coming next. So do me a favor and hit that like button. Right now, it really helps the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to see a story where the bully gets what they deserve. And most important of all, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a single moment of drama and justice. Trust me, you don't want to miss the story I'm dropping next week. Thanks for listening.